Welcome to yet another special morning. We today are conducting the Roundtable in Media, an event brought to you by Ladies Who Lead, a powerful women's community that engages and empowers women to come together and co-create the future with us. I'm Nikhil, Sangha, your moderator for the day. At Ladies Who Lead, I work in the capacity of content and programming. Outside of that, I'm an actor, writer, and a voiceover artist, and I've developed several short films which are related to social media issues, socially relevant issues, women empowerment, and so on. Back to today's event. Media is something we all consume, something we all are glued to socially, something that can change perception and drive opinion. Media and its role is today at the forefront of all our lives. It's knocking at our doorsteps more today than ever. We have some dynamic ladies who are in our panel today across different sections of media. Maanvi, editorial lead at Stree, a content brand that aims to reshape the narrative around gender and identity. Namrata Sharma, research manager, Civic Studios, a channel that creates stories that bring citizens and government together to help build better democracies. Sunchika Pandey, consultant, content and creative specialist, also known as Policewalipublic, and founder of Hat Media. Hat Media supports Mumbai, Thane and Pune police, as well as the BMC, in managing their social media profiles and connecting with citizens on social platforms. Tanvi Shukla, consulting editor, Boom. Boom is an independent digital journalism initiative with a mission to fight misinformation, explain issues, and make the internet safer. Thank you for all of you for being with us.
Thank you.
I'd like to start with you. What in your mind does media responsibility mean in today's day and age?
That's a fairly broad question. I think for us, or at least from my experience, both at Vitamin Stree and in my earlier experience of working as a journalist, I think one of the biggest sort of challenges today is to provide accurate information and to provide accurate information in a way that is accessible. So when we at Vitamin Stree are working on issues around menstrual health and sexual health, the challenge for us is that there isn't any lack of good research or verifiable information. And so when we seek to speak to young women who want to know a little bit more about it or who have questions about things as simple as, is this a menstrual cup that I want to use? Or things about sexual health, about how to take care of their vaginas, then it becomes our responsibility to ensure that when we do give them this information, we give it in a way that we know is right, which is research-backed. And the second responsibility then becomes so that we give the information in a way that's accessible. I think especially for young women, the media landscape doesn't look at them as a demographic that really, basically that is catering to them specifically. So for us, the challenge then becomes that much more difficult, where we have to give them the information in a way that's funny, in a way that's accessible, in a way that will get them to share to other women as well. So for me, I think a big responsibility for anyone who's working in a media in whatever capacity is to ensure that the information that we are providing is accurate and it is sort of delivered in a way that's not only accessible but can reach your target audience in the correct way.
Sure, but just to ask you something on that, India is such a big country, right?
Yeah.
And it spans, like the demographics are quite incredibly large. So how does your content cut through, such a vast area? I mean, you have English content, you have Hindi content,
right,
and people are on their mobile phones every day. So how do you manage that?
So we are essentially a digital content brand where we're very clear that we want to speak to the young woman who's from 18 years to 25-year-old. So someone who's just out of college, someone who's getting into their first job, and specifically speak to them on topics that we say that schools don't teach you and that everyone else thinks is too much of a stigma or a taboo to talk about. So for us, those topics invariably become menstrual health, where, say, for instance, we are saying that if you're facing extreme pain during your periods during certain months, hey, this could be endometriosis, but this is not knowledge that someone will tell you. So for us, the responsibility is, I often say this everywhere that I go, that we want to be the elder sister brand or the wiser friend of yours who's giving you the information that otherwise we would have dependent on our peer networks to give us. So for us, it's very clear about who we are speaking to and what we want to speak to them. And so, of course, we keep listening to them as well in terms of the questions that they have. But invariably, it comes down to ideas about sexual health. When is the right time to have sex? What do you need to know before you have sex? How do you take care of your vaginas? And, of course, around menstrual health as well. So when we're essentially in that space, we know very clearly that this is the niche that we have and that's how we create information.
Great. That's a lovely brand name, by the way. Vitamin
Yes,
Stree.
yes. We are also very fond of puns and jokes.
Okay, awesome. Okay, so let me move to you, Namrata. What kind of content are you driving at Civic Studios, and what is your expectation on impact?
Right. So we at Civic Studios primarily want to create stories that are going to be engaging, entertaining, and empowering. And those are kind of the values that we hold really close. So for us, we want to essentially create narratives which will be solutions oriented and bring change through that. So create systemic change, strengthen the system, empower the citizens. That's kind of our goal. And if I explain that by example of our content pieces, then we're currently in the process of releasing our first short film called Vakil Babu, which essentially focuses on the issue of the need for gender sensitization within the judiciary, which we found after a lot of in-depth research on domestic violence and gender-based violence is a huge need of the hour. So we're trying to tackle that in an entertaining fashion as a way of trying to strengthen the judiciary and making it more accessible for survivors of violence. Similarly, at Civic Studios, we're kind of open to all formats. So we want to create fiction media, be it short films, web series, longer formats. We're open to all of them and whatever works for different audiences. We also run our own in-house YouTube channel, which we kicked last year called Pocket Change. Now that very specifically looks at the younger age group between 18 to 30 in Hindi-speaking states. We capitalize on comedy and short-form content on YouTube in order to try and reach the young ones and talk to them about issues that are areas of anxiety for them. So whether it's around employment and unemployment, or it is how to kind of, we're currently working on a police series that will promote essentially more confidence in dealing with the cops and more empathy towards them as well. So there we try to create content that will encourage young ones to engage with the system more, especially using technology and various other different methods. So for us, expected impact for each of these pieces is different, but largely it is to say that we want to focus on the solutions and empower citizens while strengthening the system.
Great. Okay, great. Sunchika, I'll move on to you next. Given what you have achieved with the BMC, which is praiseworthy, how important is tonality in social media handles? Have you broken the myth of government communication necessarily being formal and very directional, or in terms of your tonality? How have you done that?
I will not take the credit of breaking this myth, because unless the police department and the municipal corporation or other government offices that we work with agreed to come on the social media platform and kind of take a leap of faith with us and experiment, this would not have been possible. Because I think I always mentioned this, that this was a very brave decision. Because with hand on the heart, whenever we get an opportunity, the first thing that we want to do to any government official is to criticize them for something which is going wrong with us, no matter how responsible we are for the same thing. We like pushing the blame, and mostly it is the people in these offices, in the municipal corporations, in the police departments, or any such office that we like to push this blame on. So I think first I would love to once again give them the credit of taking this brave decision way back in 2015, when social media was not such a big thing for public offices. So at that time it was braver than it is now, because eventually over a period of time, most of such offices are now on social media, and it gives me immense pleasure that the work that we have done since 2015 on these government accounts are always mentioned. Whenever they kind of take this lead, they always mention that it has been a lesson and learning over a period of time, which I think is very heartening. You were talking about the tonality. I think everybody always remembers the puns and the jokes and the pop culture content that you can see on the police department, even on the BMC handles. But I think I have coined a new term for it just for our convenience, and we call it responsible humor. Because it is very difficult to understand the thin line, which if breached can really take things in an absolutely wrong direction online, because it's an open platform. People have the advantage of anonymity there, and these accounts are very vulnerable, because no matter how good the work is, no matter how well we are doing for 10,000 years, even if one thing goes wrong on one day, that entire thing just falls apart. So it's a very, very sensitive space that we decided to take up, and by God's grace, I think we have been doing pretty well so far, because we've taken care of a lot of things. The police department, the government officials, they are very, very deeply involved in the entire process of content creation. Sometimes you'll be amazed with the kind of command that they have on language. With the younger DCPs now, sometimes they are watching more shows that we get the time to watch, and they sometimes come up and ask, aren't we doing something on this show, aren't we doing something on this series? And we tell them, if you have something in mind, please share with us, and they do. And they have a great command of language. Their English is just impeccable, and sometimes they correct our grammar and our sentence formation, so it's quite embarrassing. But I think the tonality, the language, and the kind of conversation we can make and the kind of jokes we can crack, all of this under their guidance and understanding, because they know the system the best. They know how much devotee they can take with people, and they know their day-to-day challenges. So I think this is a complete teamwork. Without their help and assistance, this would not be possible. But they just needed a little push, and I'm glad we were able to give them that little push and convince them that this is just going to be okay. They trusted us, and we're just trying to live up to the trust.
Right. No, but just taking from what you just said, I understand that the internet is an open medium, and you will, or you can be, you can be criticized sometimes for something you've put out. But as a consumer of media, I also firmly believe that it has brought citizens closer to the government bodies, and that's a feather in your cap with the tonality changes that you've all made. So kudos to that. I think we can all agree on how closer we feel to government bodies, especially the BMC, the police, with the way in which they're communicating today. Thank you so much. So I'll move on, Tanvi. Propaganda, you're only hearing what they want to tell you. Fake news, right? Ukraine, US elections, TRP scams. Why is the media being questioned in so many parts of the world across so many topics?
Largely because of their actions, so they're being questioned because of what they're doing. So let's, just to break up into some of the keywords that you use. You said TRP, right? For most of the mainstream television or even digital news organizations, TRPs or clicks is what really matters, because that gets them the business, that gets them the ads. And so they get driven by what gets them the eyeballs. So I think while yes, to a great extent, a lot of media is to be blamed for what is out there as biased content, propaganda, misinformation, fake news, we also must keep in mind that it comes because there are TRPs, because people prefer to watch that masala, that sensationalism, that kind of exciting, speculative news over anything else. You're clicking, you are onto that channel on digital or television, which is why they're giving you that content. So the blame has to be on both sides. If only we were more willing to pay for good, credible journalism, maybe things would be different. But we rather watch some entertainment on a few news channels than pay for 5 credible subscriptions on television or digital. So that's one part of it. The other part is that the lines between traditional news media and social media are completely blurred. It's all the same now. So, people don't really identify where they are, what's the source of their news. It could be a WhatsApp, simple WhatsApp generated by somebody. It could actually be a credible news organization. Not too many people actually bother to find the difference. So when those lines are getting blurred, anybody and everybody can stand up and claim to be a news source or a journalist or an expert on any kind of content. I think that also plays a big factor. So the biggest challenge today for us, for any of us who believe in good journalism and credible information and facts, to be honest, is to fight this kind of a mindset. Fight it internally, fight it externally, spread awareness about it, fight fake news and misinformation, and bust as many myths as we can, and also spread awareness amongst people to be a lot more responsible as well. So it works both ways. It's a long road, but we'll get there.
Maanvi, I'd like to come back to you. Social media, as we all clearly know, has no boundaries. Is that a boon, or do you look at it as a curse?
That's an interesting question, but I'm not sure that when we look at social media that you can still look at binaries of boon or curse. I think in a lot of ways, it depends on how you use it and what are the ways in which that you think you're using social media for either a purpose or to build a community. For us, again, at Vitamins 3, a large part of what we're putting out online is not just that we are content publishers, but we're also building a community. So we have people either in our YouTube comments or in our Instagram DMs wanting to know a lot more information, sort of speaking with each other, clearing each other's doubts. So from that perspective, I feel social media, or at least Instagram or YouTube, becomes then the de facto older friend that you can go to. If you don't have that community support offline, or if you don't have that group of friends offline, then social media essentially becomes that space where you're looking for a safe space, or where you're looking for a community. So in that sense, I guess I'm leaning a little bit more towards the boon side. Okay. But quite honestly, another aspect of it also has been that because we talk about topics that are so taboo, like whether we're mentioning about menstrual health, or in terms of wanting to talk about women's pleasure and orgasms, which again are things that nobody thinks that women should really be talking about. So we see our fair share of negative comments, and we see our fair share of trolling as well. But I think again, for us, the biggest learning has been the more we invest in our community, the lesser important or lesser significant these kind of negative sort of backlash becomes, because then our community is the one that is sort of catering to them, or the community, if we find like someone who's said something really stupid in our YouTube comments, so we see other people from the Vitamins 3 audience only sort of speaking to them. So in that sense, the moderation aspect of it is something that we are not too bothered by. So I feel if you come to social media with a very clear idea of who you're speaking to and what you want to use the space for, then in a lot of ways it does become a boon, because it breaks down established barriers, it helps you to find safe spaces. In our cases, we see a lot of young people who identify either as gender fluid or identify themselves as queer actually go through the entire journey of figuring out their sexuality through these safe spaces, or through finding this information that they didn't really know existed. For instance, a good example that I always cite is that we did a video on asexuality. And we said, hey, it is just not an acronym in LGBTQIA. This is what it means to be ace. And we got a tremendous response to that video, where a lot of people realized that, hey, I thought there was something wrong with me because I don't feel sexual attraction. But after seeing this video, I realized that, that not only are there other people like me, but there's actually a community that I can go to, like support groups, say, for instance. So I think in that sense, because there is so much information, because there are all kinds of people that are there, I would be biased towards the boon side.
The boon side.
Yeah.
Great. So moving on, Namrata, sensational news and content versus breaking news and content.
Right.
Which way is the pendulum swinging? Because people have a different idea now. What is sensationalist selling, or what is breaking sensationalist, sensational breaking? Is there a difference? How do you look at it?
I actually think what you said in the end resonates the most, that is there a difference? Because majority of the news today is sensationalized. So breaking news is increasingly sensational because everybody is trying to fight for the attention of the audience. And that isn't to say that all news is like that at all, but increasingly breaking news isn't what we'd hope or we'd like for it to be, which is, report facts, be unbiased, kind of provide a detailed picture, and very much talk about the very last person that kind of ongoing incident impacts. And it's very tough to nowadays even find that kind of information unless you consciously go looking. So what I feel that does is, in this fight of sensational and breaking, it often tunes out the citizens from even wanting to consume news. And that is something that we identified at Civic Studios is very much a problem for young people. So, whether breaking news has become sensational, you still kind of need to keep up with the news just to even be aware of what it is that's going on in your surroundings, in your country, in the world. And picking off of that, we said that, what's required then is to empower the citizen and help them find a way to break through this. And a big part of that is actually fact-checking platforms and people who do this work. So we said, okay, this is great, let's do a media piece on it. And we did a short kind of parody, satirical comedy video on a fake news company and how fake news is made. And we put a very clear call to action at the end of it saying, here are fact-checking platforms. This is where you can go to kind of see whether the next WhatsApp message you get, is true or not. And we really do believe that that's kind of the way now between breaking news and sensational news. It's so hard to tell apart, but one good way to do it is to find trustworthy sources that will help bust that information for you. So yes, in response, I would say increasingly breaking news is sensational, but if more and more of us talk about how to navigate that meaningfully and smartly, there is still a way for everyone to keep consuming news nonetheless.
No, of course. I actually remember the first time I read the word breaking news on television was when September 11 happened. Right?
Yeah.
Now that was breaking news and came like breaking news.
Right.
Today I feel breaking news, the word has been compromised, or it's just used very, like figuratively, like, oh, this is breaking news. And open to panel, I mean, does anyone feel the same way that everything is just becoming, just to throw it out there that something new has erupted
Yeah.
and it might not have that kind of relevance or weightage?
Yeah, I mean, before I joined Vitamin Stree, I used to work as a journalist, and in fact, I agree with a lot of what Namrata said and what you said as well, where within the newsroom, the definitions of breaking news is something that I personally also saw evolve over the time that I was in the newsroom,
Right.
where essentially what was considered relevant or important for the person to know right now, which is essentially what breaking news is, kept changing as and when we navigated the fact of clicks, as and when we navigated the fact of TRPs, or figured out that, hey, this is something that people want to know right now. So while you were saying this, funnily enough, I was thinking of the mad scramble that was there in the newsroom, and something is breaking because you just wanted to get the information out as fast as possible. And of
Right.
course, the first casualty when that happens is facts and information and accuracy, and it's just trying to check whether this is something that's credible and that can be put out.
Correct. Great. Okay, so moving back to Sanchita, have you been able to change the tide from being an information disseminator to a handle that inspires change with COVID helpline numbers, people wearing masks, information on hospital beds, oxygen? Do you see that's made a big difference going from just giving out information to inspiring change in citizens who can then try and help each other through maybe only just the pandemic?
I think there have been so many learnings over the last 5 years on social media, and while you're discussing whether it's a positive or a negative mood or way, I think the purpose of social media or any medium of communication is basically to inform and empower people and to connect people, one office to the other, one person to the other. I think that's the original purpose of communication. So social media is the same. The purpose of these offices coming from social media was just one. For us, it has become many things.
Right.
Inspiration, learning, and all of that. But for them, there was just one purpose, that there is a new medium through which we can connect more and more people. So, as a public serving office, we must connect with people on this platform also. So, their purpose is the same. Like wherever we get more people, we must connect with them also. They are still connected with people on ground. They are connected with people through hoardings. They are connected with people through radio, newspapers, everything. But social media as a platform is also has a great potential for them to stay connected to more and more people, and also to interact with them one-to-one on a real-time basis. So they understood the potential of this, and that's why they were here. And I think this was realized the best, unfortunately, during the COVID time, because it's an emergency time, very few that we've seen in the past. And I think this platform works so beautifully, and it enriched us also as social media managers. It enriched us so much that even the team, while they're not working officially in these offices, my entire team in some ways got so connected to this entire purpose of connecting somebody to the hospital bed numbers, to getting their ambulances, to suggesting them on which COVID center to go to, or where to get the vaccination, how to enroll for the vaccination, how to reach there the fastest. I think it has brought so many people together. Everybody in the mechanism was on WhatsApp groups or on the social media handles, trying their best to provide these services to maximum people. So I think it is high time that everybody who's utilizing this medium understands the power of it,
Right.
and the real purpose of it. So I think this has been beautifully realized. I think there can't be a better example than the crisis that we have just faced. And utilizing its power, I always emphasize on the use of social media for good. And I keep emphasizing on it because I know it is a possibility. We have proved in ways more than one in so many various platforms. I'm a fan of Vitamin Stree. I love what they do. I was just telling a story of how I told my 16-year-old niece that she must go to that platform because I know she talks to me. But maybe she still can't ask the very personal questions to me. Right? So she's definitely to that platform. It's such an empowering thing for so many young girls. So I think all of us have come to this platform with a purpose. We have all proved ourselves. We just want people to believe believe in the good that is being done and stop chasing all the negative and nonsense that is happening, because that is not going to lead them anywhere.
Right.
But where we are heading is a very collective effort, and I think this is going to empower many of us. And we would just keep, just urging people to join us in this purpose, in any platform, for any purpose, for any messaging. I think this is the thing to do at the base. I strongly believe.
So basically using social media as an umbrella to bring more people under it
100%.
and help others.
It is a two-way, thing, because the departments also got an access to show their human side to people, because we never knew how a police officer, the senior inspector in the police station is. They were just a scary figure to us, the story, the horror figure in our childhood stories. But now they've got a chance to tell the wonderful things that they do beyond their line of duty. Because it's not a policeman's work to make an old lady cross the road, or help children cross the road, board the bus, or to help an ailing person on the street. They could just push it to some medical person, or they could have just pushed it aside to anything. But they're supporting in any emergency, because that's what we expect out of them also. Because we don't understand that this is not their domain. So if they don't do it, we hold them responsible. While it's not even their work, but they're still doing it. So these stories needed to come out. There must be a field action. There's no denial to it. But we must understand that one day, if we do not just imagine that there's one day when we do not have them in our system. One day they say that, okay, we are shutting shop, we are not going to do anything for the day. That's going to be the toughest days of our life. So we should understand their value in our system, in our lives, and we should help them in working better.
Sure.
I remember seeing a video on your social media channel. I was watching it from Maanvi.
Yeah.
I know that I will not say it, but it was a video where he's saying that अगर नहीं पसंद है अपना देश तो बदलने में participate कीजिए, right? I think that is something which is so basic. We have to be a part of this change, so we should contribute in whatever little way we can. I think what I've done is very little. I'll not speak for the others, but what I've done is a very small thing. But I think I would like to believe, and you all need to believe it again and again, that it has brought about a great change in the way people look at the police department, in the way police department is conscious of every action that it is doing now, because it is open on a forum where it does not have their city or country. There are people globally watching their actions. So this accountability is also very beautiful, and this trust and faith that we are developing for the police department more and more, because of knowing that they are humans and tough. I think that's also a beautiful phenomenon, and it makes me very, very satisfied and I feel fulfilled.
Absolutely.
And I'm a small company.
No, absolutely. I think the department is exemplary, and it's an example for the entire country, and we're all proud of whatever the department's done. So again, yeah, thank you again on that. Tanvi, I want to ask you, there are media trials happening everywhere. Now, media does build opinion. Where does the media need to draw the line? Because you could jeopardize people, careers, lives in a certain manner. I'm not saying that that's what's happening only, but you know what I'm saying. It does build opinion overall, and there are media trials, and people sometimes don't get justice through only a media trial. So how do you look at that?
I think it ties back to what we were talking about earlier as well. Consciously, media organizations need to hold themselves back, not get tempted by only the commercial aspects of it, not get tempted by, wanting to be the number one viewed digital or television organization. And that's where you begin to first draw the line to say, no, my focus is actually, the line's here. It's facts, it's information, it's details of a case. It's not, the entire theatrics around it. You need to really move the line to what it's supposed to be. And I'm not saying that people are not doing so. There are a lot of media organizations who still believe in just presenting the facts. Yes, we are opinion makers or opinion shapers. But before you do that, you need to arm people with information. You need to arm people with facts about any story that you're covering, and then let them form their own opinion about it. You can have an opinion. I don't believe in the conservative, traditional definition that journalists shouldn't have an opinion, but that's not the first thing you need to throw out there. The first thing you need to throw out there is information. Find the information for yourself, and then arm people with those facts, and then go on to help shape any kind of opinion. So in today's day and age, it is possible. In my previous avatar as a television journalist, our daily battle was to find that piece of news and only stick to the facts of the news. It would have been extremely easy for us to just make a lot of noise about nothing, call 5 people who have nothing to do with the story at hand, and give their view of what could have possibly happened. Why would a celebrity have possibly taken their own life, or why would a celebrity possibly have been murdered, who's behind it, what were they doing, and all of that jazz. And we've seen multiple examples of it. It's very easy to get sucked into that if you allow yourself to be part of a race where the end result is only TRP and wanting to be on top of that pyramid. But it's also easy, if you want to hold on to just what you believe is credible information. And we did that, and every day we used to battle that temptation of saying that, okay, we're not going to go there because we don't know this. I mean, if I don't know this, if no credible medical expert, police expert, institution has given me this information, I'm not going to put it out there. I may believe perhaps that this is what did happen, but I don't need to put out my belief there. I need to put out the information I have there and wait until more information comes out. There is recognition for that kind of work. You just need to look out for that and hold on to that. But yeah, like you said, where do you draw the line? We need to go way, way, way back and find that line, and then try to stick to it.
Do you also feel that the phrase "innocent until proven guilty" is compromised in our environment? In the West, it's a little different.
Actually, I wouldn't say in the West it's any different.
You don't feel so?
No, there are good organizations, news agencies everywhere, and then there are the sensational ones everywhere. In fact, in a lot of Western countries, they go way overboard. What a lot of our media is doing today, disrespecting people's privacy and personal lives and mixing it all up, getting inside their homes, publishing everything which has no connection to the actual news. So they do that in the West as well. And yes, that needs to be, that shouldn't happen. And we should all believe that you're innocent until proven guilty, just like our judiciary does. But that shouldn't stop us from covering the stories, right? As long as we stick to the facts, as long as, the art of court reporting would be to say what was said in the court, and inform people that, wait, this is, just the bail hearing, or this is just the phase of trial where you are still submitting your charge sheet. These are still charges, but these are the charges. If I'm going to use the charges from a charge sheet or, a police submission which is at the bail stage and pronounce somebody guilty, that's not fair. So that's also knowing a lot more about the police process, the judicial process, and then accordingly putting out information there. You can still report on stories without actually passing a judgment on a person's guilt or innocence.
Maanvi, back to you. There are many startups in the digital
Yeah.
space focusing on a lot of women-related issues. It could be women empowerment, gender equality, menstrual health, sexual health, mental health. How do you differentiate yourself from other channels in the same domain? Because a lot of them are putting their hands up and saying, look, even we're talking about this. So where does Vitamin Stree drive its advantage in the positioning that you have created for yourself?
The short and the funny answer to that is because we are funny. That's how we're different than the others. But no, quite honestly, jokes apart, I think our differentiator is that everything that we do put out is backed by research, but we're also very conscious because all of us have worked in media in some capacity or the other. So we're very conscious that there's one way to have information and then the other big challenge is how to deliver it. So like I said, like I've been saying that there is a lack of information that a young woman has when it comes to information about her body, when it comes to wanting to know how do I get financially independent. But even if there is information out there, it's information that's inaccessible to her. Maybe because it's inaccessible because it's not coming on channels that she usually is in. Maybe it's inaccessible because it's in a language that she doesn't understand. So for us, what I would like to believe is what differentiates Vitamin Stree from other sort of startups in this particular landscape is that not only are we giving you information, we're also giving it to you in a way, in a language that you understand. So one example is that when we spoke about endometriosis, it's not as if that there aren't enough articles about endometriosis and what you should do and what you should not do. But our focus was that, hey, this pain that you're going through every month, we made some jokes about it, but it's also something that you need to be really focused on. And so what are the ways in which, if you feel that you're going through endometriosis, what are the ways in which you can deal with it? Now, once you sort of maybe speak in the language that the Gen Z speaks, maybe if you bring in a little bit of memes, you are ensuring that that information is going through that barrier that a lot of people might have if they see a word as big and jargony as endometriosis. Right. Something similar that we did again with when we spoke about financial independence and why it's so important for young women. Again, there are incredible number of articles out there from legacy publishers as well as other publishers about how you should start saving and why it's important for you to get into it. But we found out that a major challenge for young women is that they felt that there was a barrier there because they felt that this is all said in a language that's very technical, that I don't understand, that maybe I need to have an economics degree. So when we put out a video, or when we sort of spoke to our audience about it through our Instagram as well, we said that, hey, you don't need to be a financial expert to start savings. Neither do you need to be very rich. All you need to do is to sort of put aside a certain amount of money, and we can break down this very basic information that you need. So something as basic as, what does my salary slip say? And what does EPF mean on my salary slip? So, I mean, I would like to believe that what differentiates Vitamin Stree is that not only do we give you the information, we also, I would like to believe, are very funny and sassy when we're doing it, which I think is a very important thing, because it's all about how you're communicating, whether you're communicating in a way that actually reaches your audience, and whether you're listening to your audience when they say that, hey, this is great, but actually we want to know a little bit more about this as well.
So is, just picking what you said about the humor, is funny a tenet of your brand, or is it even out of the box or a little left of center, or do you strictly stick to humor?
No, I mean, for us, because what we want to do is speak in a language that our target audience is speaking. So a lot of the ways in which when we overhear how our target audience is speaking, it's pop culture references, it's memes, it's funny in the way that people like a good pun. So the way that we then speak about it is maybe bring in a Harry Styles reference or bring in a watermelon sugar reference to say that, hey, to make the point that we are trying to make. So I think it's not, I would like to believe that an accessible language is the core of our brand, and that we will evolve to change the definitions of accessible as and when it happens. And so if humorous is the way to go for it, then that's what we're doing.
Okay, great. Namrata, I'll move on to you. Something which I'm sure you know already, Civic Studios, a channel that creates stories that brings citizens and government together to help build better democracies. Yeah. Do you feel mainstream media is bringing citizens and governments closer, or do you think it's widening the gap?
I'd actually take one step back and say, I feel like now we've come to a point where there isn't just one mainstream media, because everyone's media consumption diets are so different and so fragmented that to say there's only one mainstream media is a very tough way to categorize it. So for example, and we've been discussing this, social media, right? So many people out there are getting their information from humorous channels like Stree on social media these days. And you're learning a fair amount. Similarly, you're still, consuming commercially what we kind of categorize as successful films. And similarly, there's a huge market for films that might be not commercial or theatrical releases, but in film festivals that are now accessible on, online platforms. So one thing to notice is that just given the number of media, the amount of media that's out there, it's a very, very fragmented diet. Now within that, of course, there's immense scope to do more, is what we feel. There are very much, commercially successful films that are also, say, still kind of creating narratives which support police vigilantism. But in the same vein, there are a lot of movies that are also showing how you can kind of, engage with the system. Now, where we feel there's a need to do more is to also show empowering solutions and ways to do that. So especially with the advent of web series, it's a longer format. There's a lot more, citizens and institutions that you're seeing engaging with each other. But of course, again, there's just immense scope to rally more movement within the media for solutions narratives, for empowering your citizen to feel like, yes, these are ways in which I can actually engage with the system very meaningfully. and rightfully, claim, make, or demand what's mine. So while efforts are definitely being made in small and big pockets, there's a lot more that can be done to just empower the citizen in some sense, for sure.
So, going by that, what positive traction do you feel you've achieved through the content that you've put out at Civic Studios?
Right. So I'd break that down into two things, because for us, it is also important that our stories fall very much in the entertainment domain. We're working with a vast network of stakeholders. So on the one hand, what we feel we've got in the entertainment industry is just a lot of positive backing from other producers, writers, creatives in the space who want to be involved with content like this. And that's great, because for us at Civic Studios, we want to go beyond just content that we want to create and kind of holistically build this movement in media and this desire to want to create stories which empower. So on the one hand, we definitely feel that's a great sign. But in terms of then what we've been putting out in our content and our collaborations with on-ground experts, because we also rely heavily on research and putting out the best solution that's available, which we believe that there are experts in different fields who crack. We're kind of the messenger who's just bringing that to the street. So oftentimes what we receive is in our call to actions, when we put out platforms, when we put out digital tech solutions we'll recommend where citizens can kind of report their complaints, that's where we really see appreciation both from citizens who feel they didn't previously know this, as well as people we've partnered with. So to put out a quick example, with the recent state elections that were going on during February and March in 5 of the states, we were doing short form content which specifically focused on humorously kind of motivating the citizens not just to vote, but to vote in an aware and an informed manner. So we were at the end of our videos making a plug for a platform called Maanvi, which gives you information on who your candidate is, what their education level is, what are their assets, what might be their criminal record. And the creators of this platform, ADR, they were very happy with the content and in turn wanted to use it for on-ground awareness of voters and take it there, because entertainment is so accessible. So in that sense, it kind of reached a full circle. It went out on our YouTube, but it was being taken out to the ground by them as well. And similarly, in all the YouTube content we've created in the last year, we tested with a small set of our viewers and our audiences. So from the data we've gathered over the year, we've found out that majority of our videos, just in terms of the concept that they introduce, have been things that the youth wasn't aware of. So whether that is, where you can access this information on your candidate, or how you can report a pothole on the road, or how there are fact-checking platforms that just exist, it's all very new information. So that's where we really believe we're starting to see the positive impact of breaking the mold and giving citizens avenues which make them feel like they can engage. And it's two ways and not just being talked down to or being told what's expected.
Okay, great. Sunchika, I'll come to you again. Very specifically, how have you leveraged social media to help change the perception of the government bodies that you create content for? Now, it's specific, like if you have any examples that you can share, or something that you can tell us as an anecdote.
Like I mentioned earlier, it was not a very tough thing to do. I just had to tell some true stories. No fake news, no fake information, no perception building by misinformation. But I just had to, we just had to put together a few real stories of what goes into in a day in the life of a cop or a government servant, or what are your cleaners doing on the road, what's happening when your road work is going on, who are the sewage cleaners, who are the people who are coming to collect garbage at your place, what are the difficulties they face, how there are so many challenges that they are facing. For the police department per se, such a basic thing that the first campaign that we did, I would like to give that example of 2015, because our dear commissioner at that time chose 28th December to launch the social media handle. They decided okay, 28th December we launch, and the first thing that came to our head was that okay, it's New Year's Eve just now, and it's going to be a very challenging night because some incident or the other keeps coming up on New Year's Eve, and we were like, this is going to be a very challenging night because people will be caught. And Mumbai Police was the first department which announced that we are 24/7 live, and you can message us at any hour. And trust me, the journalists, some of them were also friends, but also doing a litmus test, and I knew they were going to be mischief. And we actually passed a couple of them. I will not name anybody, but they were doing mischief and trying to find out if this is working, not working. So So I think for 3-4 nights, all the cops were on their toes, on their fingertips actually, and just trying to be very active on social. And then we thought, how could we kind of make this work? Because we had to make people realize that we are not here to kind of prove a point, we are here to help you. So don't try to just be mean and keep testing us, but seek our help for something. So the first campaign that we did on the social, on the Twitter handle of Movement Police was Selfie with Your Mom. And this is something we did in collaboration with the Radio Challenge. And we just told people that while you are going out for your New Year party, you are out on the New Year's Eve, there are so many cops who are out of their home, away from their family, to make sure that you're safe on the streets, to make sure that there's nothing untoward happening in the city. So if you could just stop and wish them, and just take a selfie with your cop and just say a Happy New Year to them. And I think that really worked because people realized, not that people did not know, they saw them every year, but they never had this opportunity to stop and say, thank you so much, you are here, while we are going to party, we are here to make sure that we are partying safely.
Something like a Jadoo Ki Jappi or something.
Yeah, Jadoo Ki Jappi would be too much, they would be pushed away, that was not allowed, though it was not a COVID time, but that is normal, they have to maintain some decorum. But a lot of cops also were very sporting. And they stood for the selfies, and there were so many selfies that came up that night. So people were not busy in complaining so much because this announcement was also made in radio. I just want to say one more thing while I complete this story, that I think it's very important to always have a 360-degree approach for special campaigns like this or accounts like this, where if they don't do good work on field, what am I going to showcase on social media? And if social media is doing something great, there should be a buzz offline also. So I think a 360-degree approach really helps. So this announcement was also made on radio, people were told, and they were also calling up and they were telling who they click a picture with. And then we had a grand closure to this entire activity that we had done that night with the Commissioner of Police at Marine Drive at 4:30 a.m. in the morning, which also showed that the top most officials with their entire team were out on the field the entire night. They were also away from their families. He took a selfie with a whole group of officers who were there at Marine Drive, and they said, this is our selfie with you. The Commissioner said, my selfie with the cop. So that was a campaign which really worked. So this basically served so many things, different kind of goals that we had to achieve that night happened. Like right in the beginning, Movement Police was out there telling people that we are 24 hours on the field, we are 24 hours online, and also that while we are out here to make sure that you are fine wherever you are. So I think that brought a lot of warmth in people, and the first activity itself set the tone right. And after that, there's been no looking back, I think.
Yeah.
So that's also there. Similarly for BMC during COVID, when the mayor of Mumbai also went dressed as a nurse one day. She was a nurse, and ma'am really went dressed as a nurse, and she served one day, and there were pictures of her. So that is very real. These little things are very reassuring. No matter who's doing it, anybody in power or position. When you see the real picture of what goes in their work, I think that is all you need to do. We just need to tell people this that they should be aware of the effort that goes in maintaining the law and order and system in whichever city they live in.
And it sets a great example for other people to follow because everyone's seeing it on their phones and it's so instant, the communication.
First example set the tone right.
Yeah.
And after that, then with monsoon, you see policemen like waist deep in water, they're all there. And I remember, I think 2017 also there was a huge tribute, and that day the commissioner, the additional commissioner, everybody was in the control room till about 4 in the morning, and the social media teams, the police department, as well as the creative team supporting, none of us slept that night. And I remember that evening, I was walking from Versova to Kalina because there was only one call made to everybody in the team, in uniform or without uniform. Your phone should not die. Borrow as many power banks as you need to, because we don't have to be online. You have to be accessible. That was the only instruction that was given. And we were also walking in the rain constantly because the Joint Commissioner was giving instructions on field. We were trying to communicate on social. So everybody came together on that. And I think at 4 in the morning, when everything got a little sober and everything, I remember the Commissioner kind of message, and he seek permission. That is it okay to go offline for half an hour? So, that really brings a lot of confidence in the people who are working under him.
Sure.
And it was very encouraging for them because they have to be there to serve people offline, online. It's a big responsibility that they have taken. So I think as citizens, we must acknowledge it. and we must participate in making this work.
Yes, of course. Tanvi, what does BOOM stand for as an initiative? It's slightly different. Is there also a specific goal that you're chasing?
So Boom essentially has been, since its inception, is largely been a fact-checking organization. It is one of the largest partners for your big social media giants in terms of checking the content, even on their platforms, flagging it off and ensuring that it gets pulled down now in India and also several other countries. They were one of the first ones to start a WhatsApp service where you could actually directly message on the Boom WhatsApp number and say, hey, I got this message, I got this video, and this is what it says. Can you verify and check it for me? So they were the first ones to actually go to people and say, if you have doubts about any piece of information that you're getting, you can send it across to us. We'll verify it to you. So last several years, they have fought misinformation at multiple levels, and I've recently only started working with them, but one of my first experiences was the recent set of communal clashes that took place, both rounds, the Ram Navami procession and the one after that for Hanuman Jayanti. And I could see, the team, extremely young team, very, very enthusiastic team, completely flooded with all kinds of messages. They were going through 20, 40 forwards, messages on various platforms, horrifying videos with horrifying, ugly narratives all across. And for 12, 14, 16 straight hours, they were just simply trying to verify and find the actual information, background to that picture or to that video, and put out as much as they could. So that's essentially core to Boom. They are a fact-checking portal. But now they're also bringing in more credible news. So they're expanding, which is where I come in terms of bringing credible information, generating videos which are explainers, which simplify information for people. I think Namrata was mentioning that as well. A lot of people do want that information. They are not aware of the facts. So what Maanvi is doing, or what Namrata is doing, we're all trying to put out information there that people don't know. What does an XYZ policy by the government mean? Why are your electric vehicles, scooters catching fire? What can you do if you have such an EV, and now what do you do? Do you sell it off? Do you dump it, run away from it? What do you do? Right? So on a daily basis, there are various aspects of our lives where we have questions, but we don't have the answers. The intent is to connect people who have the answers, which is the experts, find information which is credible, and then put it all together and take it to people who need that information. It's largely, obviously, a digital brand, so the reach is still a lot more limited than what we would want it to be, because we would want to take it out to even people, age groups who are not still so digital savvy. But it's an ongoing process. As long as we get the information out there to people to know about policy, politics, and everything else related to their life, education, health, whatever. So intent number one is fact-checking and putting out information, fighting misinformation. We also teach people how to, check on a certain information. How can you do your own limited fact check? Where do you go to verify an information? So we hold those workshops for more and more people to learn this. One aspect is just verifying it for somebody, but imagine how much more empowering it would be if all of us actually knew how to do it ourselves, and we didn't depend on anybody else to tell us what's right or wrong. So we hold those workshops as well. And the second part is to bring about more credible news. So which is what Boom is also doing.
So it's safe to say that other than fact checking, you're also asking the right questions.
Yes.
One thing is just to check the facts. The other is to ask questions.
What is often thought and seen as anti-national or anti-establishment or a certain kind of ideology. Essentially, it's about asking the questions. It's nothing else. People would want to ask questions. These are the organizations, and I've largely chosen to stick to organizations who believe in doing that, which is to say you need to ask the questions. It's not always that we may have answers as the media. It's not always that even the one we are asking the question to has the answer. But as long as you bridge the gap between the citizen and the policymaker, you're doing some decent work. And a large part of that is to just put out questions that us as regular citizens would want answers to. So yeah, asking questions is a very important part of it.
I think social media has an advantage that there's this concept of having verified accounts. So all important offices and all important people have verified accounts, and people know that if you need to know the correct information, you have all the offices to ask these questions. Like you said, you just need to ask a question to the right person or account. So on social media, this is quite sorted and it's not tough at all. And I think people also know it now. But then there's also this little temptation of falling for the more sensational misinformation that people give it to. They have the facts in front of them. You just need to have the eyes and interest for it. So on social media, at least, this is a big advantage that almost all the public offices and the most significant people or important people are there with verified accounts. And you just need to go to them and ask these questions instead of running here and there and waiting for WhatsApp messages.
Absolutely.
Verified information.
Yeah. I'm now going to open it up to the audience to ask the right questions. So, if there's anything from the audience for the panel.
One of the aspects that I was hoping we'd have some insights on was the metaverse, which is a very growing field in the media space. And yes, it's too new to actually have a solid, undeniable kind of an opinion. But I'd love to hear all your ladies' thoughts on this. And do you think it's going to be, I'm not even going on the boon and curse side of it, okay? But how do you see it evolve? What do you see it become? And how do you see it impacting the society? Perhaps some light on that.
Sorry, I think I missed the first part of the question. The impact of?
I heard metaverse.
Metaverse.
The metaverse.
Right.
Not meta in the
Sure,
Facebook?
no, I understand what you mean. No, I think it's very interesting that you asked this question because personally, at Vitamin Stree, we've been having a fair bit of conversations, and just generally the media landscape is now also moving towards figuring out what this thing called Web3 is and where it is that we can go. So I think one of the most interesting things for me personally is because there is a certain amount of community building that we do at Vitamin Stree, but right now we're sort of restrained by doing that community building on platforms that are dependent on the algorithm. So which means that even if I say, for instance, know that there is a need for this information for this video that I'm putting out, I'm still dependent on the YouTube algorithm. And especially important for us because we do a lot of content on sexual health where some terms are just, because of the way tech is, are actually downranked. So if I were to put out a video on how to clean your vagina, say for instance, it will not rank as high on Google as other terms simply because the algorithm will detect that term for vagina. So I think for me, the most fascinating aspect about Metaverse and about Web3 is this sort of potential of opportunity for moving towards building a community that is not dependent on algorithms, that allows me to sort of move away from platforms that are dependent on algorithms, where independently I can create a safe space with the ways that I want. Now, whether that of course takes the form of a metaverse, whether that takes the form of Web3, whether there is something in the NFT space that sort of allows us to do that, that of course is the challenge. But another thing I do think is that, I keep having these conversations with people within our team, is that I feel that every time there is something that's new that's happening in tech, the initial things is like, okay, we'll come to it later. Like it's almost as if the knowledge is gatekept to a certain extent. So which is why I think it's very important to start the conversation now, even in women-led communities and even in women-led organizations, and to ensure that if there are a few people that are pioneering the Web3 revolution in India, that there is a significant amount of women communities that are also a part of it to try and figure out what this is. Now, whether that's a metaverse, whether that's a Discord server, whatever it is, I think that there is some very interesting opportunities, especially for women-led communities there for sure.
I just want to add to that actually. So we don't know a lot really still about 3.0 and Metaverse. I think even the biggest of the experts right now are currently in a debate of how it's going to turn out to be. But what you would hope, and what I think a lot of us are watching out, is that what are going to be the benefits? How would you want it to evolve? I would want it to evolve in a way which brings people closer together. I would want it to evolve in a way which enables empowerment and, more importantly, privacy and security. So, all of the blockchain technology that exists shouldn't just be for me to be able to trade certain currencies and make money out of it, or buy land in a virtual universe, parallel universe, and make a life in that parallel universe. But actually use the same technology, and you can, and there are ways that it is being done for better cybersecurity, better tracking of illegal activities, but easier transactions, even for us to come together to build. If you're talking about a virtual life, can it be a place where I don't have to physically travel 3 hours to get to my office, but I can still maybe get an experience of sitting in the conference room or this virtual room and talk to my colleague as if I am meeting that person. So you still manage to bring this together, maybe in a way without us having to physically take the pain of moving for 3 hours. So I don't know. It's still evolving. But we are hoping that it brings us closer, it makes communication better, and it enables more privacy and security as we use more and more technology in all parts of our lives.
I think whichever technology comes up, anything new that comes up, it of course leads to a lot of doubts and prohibitions on what is going to happen with it. But then we can't blame the technology for it. It's basically us using it in different manners. Even for social media per se, if I could just simplify and explain this, there are different people using the medium for different reasons, for good as well as bad. So I think whatever happens with this will be a consequence of our good or bad things. Because it depends on how we are using it. We could use it for good, we could use it for evil. So I think that awareness is very important, and I think there has to be some kind of check that needs to be kept on it. Like now we are keeping so much check on social media. I think for any new technology, and we get new technologies over the years, and we're going to get so many new things, which will be beyond most of our understanding, right? And but there will be people who understand it, so they should put it to the best use. And there should be some kind of surveillance and clarity on the correct use of it, basically for good and for bringing people together and not creating havoc. That's very important.
Hi, it's not exactly a question. I'm Sonali, but I'm actually in the Web3 space. I forgot to mention to you earlier. So it's very interesting to hear everybody's perspectives. 100% agree with everybody. But also coming back to the surveillance point, the whole point of decentralization is to not have as much surveillance. But the thing is, within the technology, there's so much security and transparency that chances are, if you're doing something bad, people can see it. Everything is visible on the blockchain, and maybe you don't know the exact name, but you have the wallet ID number for every single transaction, everything happening. And that works in your favor as a person who's on team good, because you can catch everybody who's doing something wrong. And there are people out there who do spend their whole days just staring at all these kinds of things and seeing which one is shady and someone who might be a scam wallet ID. And that's another thing I want to talk about, is the scam part of it. Everyone thinks, oh my God, Web3 is full of scams, this and that. But every single thing involving finance has scams, phishing emails, literally anything. Don't share your PIN with anyone because scam, Everyone's just scared now suddenly because they don't know how to fully use it, as was mentioned before, which is why everybody is like, oh, don't use it, it's full of scams. It's only scams, which it's not. It's not only scams. Yes, you can be scammed if you just give your wallet ID anywhere and everywhere. But that's with anything related to finance or related to pretty much anything in your life where there'll be a transaction involved. And coming back to the metaverse question, I think, yes, as Tanvi said, there is going to be a lot of interactions where we don't need to go anywhere. There have been concerts happening in the metaverse with 21 million people attending, versus now think of the largest stadium in the world, probably will not have more than 100,000 seats, right? And now you're talking about a place where 21 million people attended the same concert in the same virtual space. There's like a new level of access altogether suddenly. New level of access to Ariana Grande or Travis Barker and all these artists. You don't have to be in LA to attend their concerts. You don't have to be in New York or like in, Cape Town, wherever they're performing. So it's just access, The metaverse is changing because you're getting access to things you probably wouldn't have had access to before. That is the major thing. Second thing, a lot of things are changing in terms of fashion in the metaverse. Now, I don't know if India is ready for that yet, but the whole thing behind it is if we start going into the metaverse, if we have our presence, our virtual self in there, are we going to start caring about how we dress, what we carry, things that, we show people, which means now we need accessories there, we need clothes in there. There are clothes in there already, but do we want to maybe wear our favorite clothes, which we own in real life also? Do we want to wear our favorite designers who, once that becomes commonplace, then people will want to do, especially if you're attending a fancy ball or like an event or like the Met Gala, right? So I think even given the fact that all of this is just increasing during the pandemic is even better, because I don't need to go near somebody in the real world and if they cough on me, I'm going to get COVID. Because now I'm sitting in my living room, they're sitting in their living room, and we can still chat next to each other, right? So, sorry, I went on a very long tangent, but I just thought.
I think a slight counter to that is that while of course it seems to be an exciting opportunity that we're still sort of figuring out, in our experience, whether it has been the coming of the internet or any new piece of technology, we've always seen that the technology is reproducing existing social structures that are always there. So say for instance, when the internet came initially in the 2000s or later much, there was just like, it's a completely free space and it's going to sort of change the way that, I'm talking about it from a gender perspective, right? So it's going to change the way that women and men interact, and cut to 2020 and 2021, where if you're a visible woman online, you know for a fact that you have to brace for a certain amount of abuse. And I have been active on Twitter long enough to say that this has become now a fairly serious problem. So I think that with any new piece of technology, even with the metaverse, it's a fair assumption to make that certain sort of gendered prejudices that exist in the offline world will be reproduced in the online world. We've been seeing this also with algorithms that we are working with right now, where in fact, there was a great study that Google did on algorithms where they sort of put in like basically an autofill sentence of blank cooks, and invariably the autofill suggested woman, because that is again this very idea of a gendered role as well. So I think it would be interesting for sure in terms of what metaverse can offer us, whether it's in terms of privacy or not, but I personally would be a little sort of wary of it, of seeing it as something that will be completely free from the prejudices that we have in the offline world, especially coming from a gendered perspective, where we have seen these kind of things also being reproduced in technologies, and then figuring out ways to sort of navigate that as well.
I have another problem with you, not just with this, but any kind of artificial intelligence and all these things, because the kind of distance that it brings amongst all of us, like somebody else sitting in a living room and watching it, and me sitting in my living room and watching it, and while we are sitting here together and talking to each other, this still is so much more warmer and nicer for me. So that technology, I'm just being able to adapt myself to, and it's a shortcoming on my part. Maybe I'm too old school and I'm redundant very soon. And my child is going to adapt myself to this. So it's going to become a problem for me, but I personally just want a human being to talk to me on the phone on the other side. Then they tell me press 1 for this, press 2 for this. I know all of this is great, but I personally am so wary of it. And I don't know how it's going to impact us as human beings. This distance and this lack of importance of personal touch and the warmth, very old school, but very so me.
So it's good that we have,
I just myself. I hope that there's a space still someday. I somehow feel that we'll all be so far apart. And right now, I just can't imagine doing this or having more of this. I think you're already very distant. Just a video call, I've not seen my sister's daughter, son in 3 years. She just had a child 3 years ago, and after a lot of effort, she had as a child. And I've not been able to go and cuddle baby, but we are at ease because they're being able to see their child every day. They've seen him growing on video calls. And they're cool with him.
There's no touch there either. In the metaverse, you can touch them eventually, not yet.
Yeah,
so you're going to hold the baby in the metaverse eventually.
So having the baby girl. Right? I'm sorry, but I'm just so hung up with this thought that I need interpersonal interaction.
If I may, I think if we stop thinking of it as an either or,
Yeah,
and we start
yeah.
looking at it as a
Correct.
add-on, the acceptability will increase.
As complementary
I
to the
don't see
offline
it
world that we
any
are
other
living in.
way. How else do you think it's going to be? I mean, social media is so much a part of it, but it's still the add-on, right? We still meet. 2 years of pandemic taught us that we need to meet people. This whole event could very well have been online, right? We were already moving in that direction. For 2 years, we were doing it. And yet, the first opportunity, and we've all hopped in here. So I see it as an add-on. Just as an example of social media, I recently lost my father-in-law less than 2 weeks ago. And I was very close to him. I saw the whole ritual, the final rites, on a Zoom call, which otherwise I could not have because he lived in New Zealand where the borders are sealed. And I can't begin to tell you how precious it is to me. And I try and imagine this in a virtual world where I could probably have been able to hug him and kiss him and say my last goodbye.
I think you make a very important point that any new technology will be complementary to how we are living our world. That there will be a certain charm, like you were saying, in sort of having this kind of an offline interaction where we are talking to each other. But everything that comes is not going to be a replacement to that. We just have to sort of figure out ways to navigate in which it can be an enriching experience to the experiences that we're already having.
I mean, I think what Sunchika is also saying is that there's a thought of old school, which I totally appreciate and understand. It's almost like reading a paperback versus the Kindle, right? I think that's what you're talking about. I think what you're talking about is that somewhere it really helps, the convenience of it, and not only the convenience, but when it helps on a rainy day, then you really can't replace that because it's giving you something that otherwise you would have never had the opportunity to. So I think they both work in tandem. I think, they're mutually somewhere,
Read your
together
paperbacks
somewhere.
and your Kindle.
A lot of the people had to flee because of the war, obviously, but the banks all got frozen. So people had to flee without access to their bank accounts. However, the people with crypto wallets who had cryptocurrency, they are the ones fine right now because there's no one who can stop them from accessing their own money. And that is the whole point of decentralization. The whole point is, while yes, you should have surveillance and there should be some people, watching, monitoring that transaction IDs and everything, it's also like, what rights do banks have to freeze our accounts? Obviously, if there's fraudulent activity, that's a separate issue. But if that is my money in there, why should I be broke because you are not giving me access to that? That is the whole point of decentralization. Only I should be the gatekeeper to my own resources. It's like Facebook with data, right? They steal our data and make their own money. Now, what if we had NFTs that controlled our own data and people had to pay us to access that data? Wouldn't that make everybody feel a little better? And you get to choose. No, you can't use my data. Yes, pay me and take my data. It's the whole free will kind of a thing. And that onus and control over your own stuff that comes with Web3.
Moving away from the metaverse and all the AI, just a quick question. Is there something known as media censorship?
No,
I think
there is, and there are multiple kinds, right? There is one self-censorship, and then there is an externally triggered, induced censorship that exists, and that's true globally, and that's been true ever since the segment media would have existed. It's a very well established fact that any powers that be would want only information that they are comfortable with to come out, and nowhere in the world, anytime in the history, would you actually have any powerful entity that would be like, all right, go ahead, say what you want, say it the way you want, we're okay with it. What differs is the extent of trying to influence it or tackle it or acknowledge it or block it out completely. So that varies from time to time and from entities to entities. But considering that, good credible organizations and good credible news media at least has survived all these all these years and decades and centuries, I think it will continue to still survive. So that's there. There is also an element of, I think, self-censorship, which is also important to a certain extent. And the definitions of it will vary with time. The boundaries of it will also change with time. But it comes in with some amount of sensitivity as well. What is it that I should be saying out loud? And how will it affect people who are hearing it? What is my style of delivery of that content going to do to people, or what impact will it have? That does bring about some amount of self-censorship, which I don't think is bad. I mean, I'm not saying don't give the information. I'm just saying think about how you give the information, and at what time do you give the information. At a peak of a riot or a communal clash, you have to be extremely sensitive about what information. At the peak of live reporting on a terrorist attack, you can't be standing there and saying, oh, I just saw 4 para-commandos jump from the helicopter on top of that building. That's self-censorship as well, because you don't want to compromise the actual action which is taking on ground. So there are both kinds, and there is a constant battle always which goes on, but it's a constant battle, and usually you do manage to get out of it victorious and put out the information.
No, absolutely. I think the effort is that we all expect the media to be very responsible. But today, in an uncanny manner, we are the media ourselves. We have phones, we have photographs following, we have reach. So we also have to kind of be responsible. And that, I think that's the self-censorship she's talking about, because we all want to coexist in a certain manner. So I think that's the need of the hour. But I'm going to now take this opportunity to close it out. Thank you to all our dynamic change makers in this panel. Maanvi, Namrata, Sunchika, Tanvi, thank you so much for coming and spending this time. I'd like to thank our audience, Team LWL, and of course, thank our venue partner, Book My Show. Thank you very much for the space. We sure hope this roundtable discussion, facilitated by Ladies Who Lead, will help drive change, shape opinion, and pave the way to co-create the future together. Thank you so much once again.
Thanks
and
so
please
much.
do join us for breakfast.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Thank you so much, guys.